Theodore Robert Bundy, also known as Ted Bundy, was one of the most notorious serial killers in American history. And we are going to discuss his crimes, how he got caught, and see original video with his sentence.
Over a 4-year period, he brutally murdered and mutilated 30 women.
I don't think anybody doubts that I've done some bad things. The question is what, of course, and how, and maybe even most importantly, why.
Although Ted Bundy would ultimately confess to 30 murders, but this was just the tip of the iceberg.
Severed and taken up the road about 25 to 50 yards and buried.
Some estimated that he was responsible for hundreds of unsolved deaths in the 1970s. People started living in fear.
The killer came in from the night and then returned to it with an ease that has so far baffled police and left most co-eds here terrified.
Ted Bundy would strike calculated, and use one of several tactics. One was of stalking women going from the bars and knocking unconscious.
I knocked her unconscious and strangled her and drug her into 10 yards into the small grove of trees that was there.
Another tactic was following women to their home, waiting for women to go to sleep, breaking inside, beating and raping them.
On January the 4th, 1974, Bundy crossed the line. 18-year-old Joni Lenz was attacked in her bed. She was found barely breathing, covered in blood, and with a metal bed frame rammed into her vagina.
This was a vicious animal who was foaming at the mouth when he was inside that house.
Another tactic was luring his victims from public, by feigning a physical disability, and knocking unconscious.
In 5 cases, he took the girls' heads off and kept them as souvenirs.
In one case, I believe he bit a nipple off.
He was like a shark, just, feeding in a frenzy.
He could look into their eyes, he could hear their last gasp, and actually breathe their last breath as they exhaled.
Or impersonating an authority figure, and making victims unable to resist.
Bundy started to enjoy the power he had over his victims.
He and I talked about why he killed. He said because possession was at the bottom of his desires. He wanted to possess them, he said, as if he would possess a Porsche or a potted plant. And a memorable quote from Ted that, to an FBI agent was, if you have enough time, you can do anything you want to them.
Despite his heinous crimes, Bundy was able to evade capture for years. He was charming, intelligent, and seemingly normal, which made it difficult for law enforcement to catch him. But in 1975, a routine traffic stop in Utah would finally lead to his downfall. Bundy was driving a stolen vehicle and refused to cooperate with police. He then was arrested and taken into custody. It wasn't long before the police began to suspect that Bundy was the same man responsible for the murders and disappearances.
When police finally arrested Bundy, America was shocked. He appeared to have it all. He was good-looking, articulate, a law student and a budding Republican.
During his trial, Bundy famously acted as his own defense lawyer and attempted to represent himself.
Protesting his innocence, he was going to lead his own defense. The public would have to prepare themselves for a new Bundy. Ted, the showman.
My name's Ted Bundy and I'm a defendant in the case, and I'm just here to introduce myself.
Bundy became a cult figure. Women flocked to his trial.
Every time he turns around, I kind of get that feeling, oh no, gonna get me next.
But yet you're fascinated by him.
Very, very. Every night when I go to bed, I get very scared. I shut my door and lock him.
Try to imagine yourself in his place and to see how he's feeling, looking at the pillows, the blood stains and everything.
He also tried to escape from custody multiple times, once by jumping out of a courthouse window and another time by crawling through a ceiling panel. But despite his efforts, the evidence against him was overwhelming. Here is a record of Ted Bundy trial verdict and Bundy's reply.
A judge in Miami today followed the jury's recommendation and sentenced Theodore Bundy to die in the electric chair for the murder of 2 co-eds. Bundy is the 136th person under death sentence in Florida. Ed Rabel reports.
Before pronouncing the sentence, Judge Edward Cowart let Bundy make a statement.
I'm not asking for mercy, for I find it somewhat absurd to ask for mercy for something I did not do. So I will be tortured for and will suffer for and receive the pain for that act. But I will not share the burden for the guilt.
He learned that his appeal had been turned down about midnight. I understand he received a call from his attorney, Paulie Nelson. Prison officials are now preparing to shave his head and prepare him for execution at 7 o'clock.
On January 24, 1989, he was found guilty and sentenced to death in electric chair.
Somewhere around 6:20 or 6:30, the lights in the prison went off, and that's the sign when they switched to the generator.
At some point, they brought Ted in, and he was being supported by the guards. Sort of walked in.
And his knees just buckled. I mean, the guards had to hold him up, and then he sort of got his composure back a little bit right after that, and he sat down.
They then began to prepare him for the execution, strapping him in.
And he looked at everybody in the room, one by one, went through everybody's eyes, trying to see who he knew or who he remembered. And the only person he smiled at was the prosecutor, and it was kind of, hi.
And then they put the headgear on, put the mask over his face, and executed him.
And you see the body tense up like that, and then it sort of loosens up. And then after a little while, it'll tense up again when they hit him with the second jolt of electricity. There is a smell of burning flesh in the room, and just a light wisp of smoke from the leg, as I recall.
He's gone! He's gone! He's gone! Yeah! He's gone!
Bundy the monster was gone. Florida had waited 10 years for its revenge.
Theodore Robert Bundy died at the age of 43, leaving a lot of grieving families and no remorse for the crimes he did.